Heyo, I'm Grim, and welcome to the 4th episode of Washer Dryer, the show in which we play through Banjo-Kazooie as a washer-dryer machine. In this episode, we're going to go for a bit of casual spelunking in Clanker's Cavern, which is a cavern containing Clanker. And so, without any much ado, let's make like Mario and jump down that pipe. I've always really quite enjoyed Clanker's Cavern because it stands as such a contrast to, excluding the overworld, the first 3 levels you see within Banjo-Kazooie. Spiral Mountain, Mumbo's Mountain, and Treasure Trove Cove are all really bright and colourful and rather cartoony, whereas once you get into Clanker's Cavern, everything is a bit grimy, a bit dirty, and it looks more like the trash compactor in Star Wars Episode 4, rather than the grassy fields of which you'd likely find a Teletubby roaming. Which is rather suiting, as after all, Clanker is Gruntilda's garbage grinder. Although, rather ironically, while Banjo and Kazooie looked rather out of place within Clanker's Cavern and more at home in the bright and colourful cartoony worlds, in complete contrast, this is possibly the first time in which the washer-dryer has seemed like it actually belongs. Which, I suppose makes sense because it is in a similarly lit and textured world in Banjo-Tooie in which you actually play the washer-dryer as a proper transformation rather than a cheat. Now, I have been interestingly informed by the commenter Silent Panda that you don't actually need any Mumbo tokens in order to transform into anything while doing the washer-dryer cheat. Being a transformation already, the game just assumes you're trying to transform back into Banjo or what have you, and so not unlike how it doesn't cost you anything to transform out of being a transformation, you can just transform for free out of the washer-dryer into whatever transformation usually costs tokens on the level that you're on. This level was unfortunately recorded before I received that comment, although I find it extremely interesting, and so following this level I'm going to stop collecting Mumbo tokens in order to put it to the test. Also, this part coming up, in which you glimpse Clanker for the first time through the pipe, is probably one of my favourite reveals in all of video game history. You expect there to be some sort of entity named Clanker, because after all, the level's called Clanker's Cavern, and yet you don't know if he's a good guy or a bad guy, and when you first glimpse his sharp metal teeth through the small narrow tunnel, you still aren't entirely sure what to make of it. You don't know if he's a boss or an ally or really anything about him, and yet being a narrow tunnel and already having explored the entire level up to this point, there's only one way you can go. It was really well executed, extremely memorable, and now I'm doing it as a washer-dryer machine. As you can probably tell, I had quite a bit of trouble actually controlling the washer-dryer in a lot of these underwater areas. Now, to be entirely honest, I'm not really sure if this was because it's a washer-dryer machine and so handles moderately different from Banjo, or if it's because just before doing this challenge I was playing Banjo-Tooie, which has essentially the same controls for practically everything in the game except for the underwater segments, which are inexplicably inverted. But despite this extreme adversity I faced, I still managed to swim through the keyhole 3 times, causing this wonderful cinematic and raising up Clanker from the polluted depths of the water in order to give him a breath of fresh, or no doubt actuality, equally polluted air. And so, following having achieved my Greenpeace level rescue mission, I collected all of the music notes in the ginger at the bottom of Clanker's Cavern because really it's a pain in the bottom to go down there, and so it's best to only have to do it once, so while you're there, just get everything you can. On a somewhat unrelated note, I've always kind of wondered how the little fish that you steal the oxygen from actually manages to stay alive down there if it is so very polluted. I'm not saying that Clanker's a liar, I'm just suggesting he might not be telling the truth and possibly took advantage of us overselling just how polluted the water was in order for us to let him free. On why he was chained to the bottom of the cavern, we only have Clanker's word to go by, and it is entirely possible that he may be a dangerous criminal who we have just let free. Although, to be entirely honest, for a jiggy, if Clanker had told me that he had straight up killed a man, I would still probably have helped him out provided there was a sweet puzzle piece on the table. As you can well see with these music notes, hit detection still remains a really big problem that is causing a lot of issues and thus far hasn't really given me too many advantages. Maybe when we reach a point where enemy attacks start going through me with the same frequency that I go through collectibles, I won't complain quite so much about it, but until that point I would say that the hit detection in the washer-dryer challenge is thus far the most difficult thing. Well, that's certainly not true. Not being able to get some jiggies whatsoever is probably the most difficult thing, but I'm still going to complain about this regardless. I mean, really, collecting the music notes across Clanker's back should have probably taken about 15 seconds, but instead it took around the average lifespan of a Galapagos turtle. After that utter train wreck of an experience was dealt with, I did some of the most accurate egg shooting known to washing machine kind and collected this here jiggy behind what looks like should be some sort of clever puzzle, but is instead just behind a gate that you shoot before its Star Trek doors away. And so, with 2 Jiggies down and 8 more to go, so far Clanker's Cavern is going rather swimmingly. And in reflection of that, all of the collectibles I collected while in this fast forward mode were collected without much difficulty. Although, unfortunately, what followed was some more of the most inaccurate egg shooting I've ever done. Now, while I would really like to just blame this on the game and claim that it was so very difficult to shoot because the washer dryer is just so hard to control and everything was just stacked against me, looking back at the footage, I think it's entirely possible that maybe I'm just not very good at video games. Luckily, however, before I got too distraught, I nailed a perfect shot and proved that I am, in fact, one of the best video gamers to ever have lived. To really hammer home this point and illustrate perfectly that I am an excellent gamer, I immediately headed to the other side in order to demonstrate my expert marksmanship and shoot out the other tooth. Although, unfortunately, while doing so, I instead proved my initial theory correct, and it does turn out that I am in fact actually just rather garbage at shooting. I then went on a bit of an Easter egg hunt, not because I had wasted all of my eggs with my terrible accuracy, but instead because they are an important part of a balanced diet. And having taken this brief walk to clear my head, I returned back once again to the podium, took aim, and nailed 3 shots in a row, dispelling that nasty rumour that was put out that I'm a bad gamer, and instead reiterating just how fantastic I am. But really, that was some real bad video gaming just then, and I'm just so glad that it's now recorded for all time. But not to dwell on that too much, as after all, I'm a mostly human being and not a dwelling, I quickly collected a couple more collectibles before entering the Den of the Mutants. Unlike Magneto coming up against the X-Men in pretty much every single encounter he did so, I did not have too much trouble with these mutants. They were certainly, not unlike my battle against Nipper, more difficult than they usually are when you're actually just playing as Banjo, but unlike my battle against Nipper, my encounter with the Snipper mutants was short-lived and not exactly very eventful. I've always found this challenge to be somewhat hilariously anticlimactic, as the green tinge results in a very threatening atmosphere, the music is extremely frantic, but the Snipper mutants themselves are really no more dangerous than any low-level bad guy in Banjo-Kazooie. But that said, their demise still results in a Jiggy, so really, who am I to judge? If they want to trot around and act as if they're a boss battle, and they're willing to put their money where their mouth is, I say let them do it. And so, with that well-earned Jiggy now collected, it was just a short fast forward to the next one, which isn't protected so much by a challenge, but more of a bit of a leap of faith combined with it being a little bit hidden. It's very much another instance like I was talking about during Treasure Trove Cove, where I'm sure that this Jiggy would have been much harder to get the first time playing it, but since I've played this game so very many times, I know that your oxygen meter will allow you to safely get it, and I already know where it is, so it's not really much of a task at all. And so with that Jiggy retrieved, we're now up to 4 Jiggies successfully collected in Clanker's Cavern, which means it's about time to now actually head on into Clanker himself. But before we do, there are a few more things that I first need to gather in this here collectathon, which I'm going to do at rather fast pace, slowing down whenever there's anything important, because, to be completely honest, I spent far too much time trying to get them, because either the controls as a washer-dryer are not very good, or I'm just having a bad day. And so the first item of note gathered, aside from the music notes, which are quite literally items of notes, was the first honeycomb collected for Clanker's Cavern. And if you're wondering why that first honeycomb brings it up to 4 honeycombs in the completed honeycomb set, not 5, it's because back in the previous episode while doing Treasure Trove Cove, I of course missed one. And fast forwarding once again into the point where I collect the next collectible of note, I got once again another Mumbo's token, which, I suppose, is not really that much of a collectible of note, because, as I said, after this level I'm doing at the moment, I'm going to stop collecting them altogether. So I guess this is one of the last Mumbo tokens I'm going to collect in the game, unless it turns out that I actually need them. After getting that, it was time to head over to Clanker, climb up on top of him, and try to get to the top by hitching a ride on his blowhole. While doing so, bugger up, fall through the blowhole, and end up inside Clanker, which wasn't really a great deal of a setback because I had to go inside Clanker at some point anyway, and I've been doing the levels pretty much entirely out of the order I usually do them, so what's the harm in being a little less linear? And so, with the all-important grunty switch ground pounded, it was time to run the gauntlet and get Jiggy number 5. Also, not to brag too much, but running the gauntlet perhaps illustrated that I have the single greatest reflexes and timing and luck in all of human existence. Or, let's be honest, it's more than likely it actually illustrated that for once, the terrible hit detection that the washer-dryer has was actually in my favour. And while you're watching the screen right now, seeing a washer-dryer machine flying around inside a shark's body, I know what you're probably thinking. Hang on, something doesn't seem quite right. There's something ultimately strange about this entire scene that I'm seeing, and I totally understand what you mean, and I totally agree. Isn't it weird that Clanker has a blowhole? I thought he was a shark, and I think I've probably come up with a rather nifty solution as to why that's the case. It is, I believe, an undiscovered scientific fact that sharks do in fact actually have blowholes. If this is in fact true, it means that Banjo-Kazooie is, technically, actually an educational game. However, that's really just a theory. A game theory, and you'll have to let me know about your opinion on the matter in the comment section below. I have heard a couple of rebuttals claiming that it doesn't matter if sharks aren't supposed to have blowholes, it's just there for interesting level design, and after all, the game is cartoony and you're playing as a bear with a bird in his backpack, so why are we drawing the line of realism here? Which is obviously a ludicrous and unacceptable response. But I digress, because during my digression, I was working really hard to get another Jiggy. In fact, I was essentially swimming through hoops to get it. See, that's actually where the saying comes from. I bet you didn't expect to learn some etymology while watching this here washer dryer video, but that's a little bit of a bonus. But enough wordplay, because it's time to speed up once again until we get to the next Jinjo, which is the 4th Jinjo, which is one less than the 5th Jinjo, which is how many Jinjos we need to get another Jiggy. And so, since until I get another Jinjo, ultimately 4 Jinjos is entirely pointless, it's time to set off once again in search of more collectibles. And you of course don't have to go too far, as after all, I've already, through the demonstration of my expert marksmanship, opened up yet another entrance into Clanker himself through my dentistry. However, it is just another Mumbo Jumbo token, which I believe now to be the last one I'm getting in the level. And which also means following a quick swim to the other side of Clanker's mouth will get me a Jiggy through his other shot-out tooth. I knew that one side was a Jiggy and the other side was a Mumbo Jumbo token, I just didn't remember which was which. And so with that, the 7th Jiggy collected, it's time to do a little bit more inside of Clanker before going outside again and collecting the rest of the collectibles that I missed when I accidentally fell down his blowhole. I've always really been quite fond of Clanker's Cavern, in no small part due to these sections of the level in which you're actually inside Clanker, which I think is probably slightly due to the fact that it reminds me quite a lot of the Ocarina of Time level, that you're inside the fish, which I think is called Jabu Jabu or something. I mean, call me old-fashioned, but if it's going to remind me of Ocarina of Time, I'm probably going to enjoy it, because that's such a darn good game. Although I'm not sure I remember, in Ocarina of Time, there being that many washer-dryers. But regardless of that fact, whether I'm right or wrong, it's now time to talk to Bottles and learn yet another ability. This little chat of course gives us the extremely useful ability Wonder Wing, which allows us to move through extremely dangerous areas of territory without taking any damage. Here demonstrated, it allowed me to get another Jiggy without losing any health. Although, to be fair, I did do that earlier without Wonder Wing at all and took no damage anyway, so I have a pretty good theory that this area just doesn't damage the washer dryer because it fails to detect any hits from Clanker's saw blades. I, as you can see, put this pretty heavily to the test, and aside from actually touching the very top where the blades spin on, I took no damage, so it seems pretty conclusive. It's kind of refreshing that for once the washer-dryer has a glitch that, instead of completely screwing me over, actually works a little bit in my favour. Here's hoping there's more of that and less of the other. But it's again time to fast forward rather rapidly through some pointless running around, because we're heading back to the blowhole, and hopefully this time not falling through it. I always like the little details, like how the platform that you ride up from Clanker's blowhole is actually a screw or bolt, and how Clanker himself is this weird cyborg creature, where he's half metal, but he's also half flesh. Now, I was going to accept responsibility for that fall that I just had before, and claim that it wasn't the fault of the washer-dryer, but instead that I'm just kind of rusty at platforming, but watching it back while editing this video, it was actually entirely not my fault. So I've got the replay of that playing in the top right corner, and as you can see, I fall straight through the platform. Not exactly a major problem on this level, because it's not really that far to backtrack, but if this becomes a repeating trend, I could really see it becoming rather annoying, especially in late levels such as Rusty Bucket Bay and Click Clock Woods. And so with that, the 9th Jiggy gathered, all that's left to do is to get the final music notes, the final Jinjo, which will give the final Jiggy, and get the final honeycomb. And rather luckily, all 3 of those things are positioned in the exact same place. And so, with the final row of 5 music notes positioned along the pipe rather carefully gathered, and subsequently the destructible grate, which is no doubt some sort of drain or what have you, ground pounded, and the Jinjo inside retrieved, meaning of course that the 10th Jiggy for the level has been successfully rewarded, which is once again rather refreshing because in the last 2 levels we've lost a Jiggy, and for once it's nice to avoid moving one step closer to entirely failing this challenge. And of course, the honeycomb gone gotten, that means it's about time for this episode of Washer Dryer to come to an end. I think in reflection, for once, in Clanker's Cavern, the balance of the positives and negatives of being a washer dryer are actually rather even. I mean, sure, there was some platforming issues, but at least this time it didn't rob me of a Jiggy, and it made me in some places invincible, so who can really complain about that? And with the all-important overworld Jiggy now also gathered, it's about time for me to sign off. So as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, I have been and still am Grim Grindle.